Welcome, everyone, to the 5th episode of Fad or Future with Infotech Design Solutions. I am Justin Callahan,
and I'm Steve Williams.
Hello, and welcome to whatever day it is that you're watching this. Time flies when you're having fun or you're in a pandemic. So it might be...
Viva la virus.
It might be a Monday, might be a Sunday, who knows? But we do have some interesting topics that we're going to cover today. And get our take on whether we think it's fad or future. Just a little precursor, we've got technology tracking for virus hotspots. That's definitely been in the news, a big topic as this pandemic drags out. We've got streaming office upgrades and that ever adventure of where did that edit button move now today. And then we have lastly, decentralized server environments. As the pandemic continues, we are definitely going to have some people start to really assess whether or not their server environment that is traditionally in the office is the best fit for them. So we have some interesting topics, definitely pandemic focused, but that's the world we live in right now. So keeps things interesting. So to kick us off, we are going to talk about technology tracking for virus hotspots first. So I'm sure a number of you have seen this. It's in the news. Google and Apple are both being tapped, if you will, to start considering some integrated technologies for tracking viruses. We're also seeing a number of other companies start to kind of position themselves for this need to track where virus hotspots are occurring, where they're coming up, and kind of prepare and adapt resources accordingly. So I know that that's definitely been on the forefront of what I've been reading. Steve, what about you? What do you think?
Definitely. So this is largely around the fact that there's a lot of big data out there on people, and you can look at some good real-world examples like South Korea that didn't actually go through like a full lockdown. Because they went through, a previous iteration about whatever it was last time this stuff happened. They were pretty tangibly impacted, and they learned from that, and they have mechanisms in place. But these end up having a side effect where there's a little bit of social shaming potentially involved because it is part of social media. It is part of it. So there's this kind of, I think, torn thing where you have this app that's saying, hey, I'm infected and these are all the people. It's going to immediately potentially let the other people know because it knows your contacts. It knows where you've been. It's aggregating this data about you to potentially protect the greater community. So there's this kind of trade-off. My privacy's a little more compromised, but at the same time, I'm protecting the people that I may have been interacting with because now they can know that, I'm not well, I'm not sick. I don't have to go through this effort of letting them know. They're just going to know. And further, then at the top level, your governments and society can track this stuff, right?
Absolutely, and I think that's to tail off of that perfectly. I think that's one of the biggest questions. It's a very interesting moment to have this kind of need as a society, this need to be able to track and correctly monitor the pandemic as it spreads, because we're having a little bit of a reckoning right now with a lot of pushback against social media websites and the big technology companies in terms of what data they have and what data they're tracking. So it's very interesting as you see a lot of these solutions try to toe that line of, provide that social information, but at the same time, not enter into that question of that privacy concern, which is just a big topic in America.
Well, I would love to agree with you and think we have a pushback on that kind of stuff, but I think it's the opposite. I mean, I can't watch the news on any given day without hearing about Facebook or Twitter or whatever TikTok, social media platforms got the buzz on that given day. So actually, I think it's the opposite. I think people have just gotten so used to this that it's really just another piece of the privacy wall falling down.
Well, and maybe that's part of the question too, is we'll see how much of the actual pushback occurs. And that's a lot of people are having to come to terms of where they think on it. And it's definitely going to be a hard question.
At? Fad or future on this one?
I think for this one, it was a tough go, but I really do think it's a fad. I don't think it's something that they're going to be able to get enough momentum, not in this current situation.
See, I'm going to argue future, and I think the South Korea model proves it. The social need will outweigh the privacy need in terms of a pandemic, And I don't think people really, I think there's people that care, but I think that enough people have a social concern that they would be willing to probably put some sort of app on to say, hey, this is where I've been. And again, there's some anonymity to it that they're safe that way, but I think this is the future. Social reporting on keeping those pandemics under control. So, all right, cool. What's next?
All right, so next we have streaming office upgrades. So this topic is a little bit centralized specifically to Microsoft Office and some of the new technologies that they've put forward in sort of evolving this idea of you have a subscription to Office 365 and you're getting this Office suite of programs, but you're not getting one program and you're just waiting for the next service pack. You're constantly getting updates. And this has evolved slowly from iterative updates every month, every couple of weeks, to you're pretty much constantly getting micro updates at any given time.
Honestly, I think if we try to talk about this topic before COVID-19, people would have had no idea what we're talking about. But because so many people have moved to Teams, and so many people are seeing how fast Teams features are being added to compete with Zoom and to just improve the overall experience with online video meetings, just like the one we're recording right now, that now they understand what we're talking about. I mean, just this morning I logged in and now I can do my custom backgrounds as part of a feature. I can do the pop-out chats and pinning chats. That's all stuff that just showed up this morning. I didn't ask for it. Didn't know it was coming. Here it is.
Didn't necessarily want it either. And that's some of the big challenges, is that sometimes you rely on a feature that just goes away in these kinds of upgrades. One of the perfect examples is there's a lot of talk about the June Windows 10 upgrade where they were taking away storage, where they just took away storage space functionality, which was one of the key backup solutions that were still available and built into Windows 10. So there's definitely this interesting pushback, and it also puts us as IT consultants in an interesting position too, because sometimes we're just as aware of an event as it's happening at the same time as our clients are. We're not able to be prepared.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's definitely annoying. There is a roadmap, and all this stuff does get published, but keeping up with it is almost a full-time job. And the release schedules aren't done. I just was explaining to a customer this morning, there's no guaranteed date when you're going to have a new feature because there's millions of customers on the subscription platform. Microsoft can't roll it all out in one day. They have to stagger those rollouts, and it doesn't mean that just because you're in a certain time zone or a certain country that you're going to all get the update at the same time. You could have different people getting the upgrade inside your own office at different times. So that's completely annoying to me. And we have no control. As a managed services provider, we'd love to say, okay, everybody in your company is getting a new feature in Excel tomorrow, but we can't control that. We can only say, don't do it. But then to do it, it has to be a manual process. So there's definitely some management and communication that could be better.
Right. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm all for the idea of automation, especially in this day, with this day and age. But there still needs to be some modicum of expectations that you're able to set for the technology, especially when it's something that people are relying on so heavily right now. I mean, fortunately, we can say that the Teams changes are pretty much all positive, right? It's just, there's a new little feature tucked away in a setting menu or something. And those are great. But at the same time, that's not necessarily the case in a lot of other streaming app platforms. Sometimes it's fundamental changes. I've moved this key feature over here, or I've updated this menu to be completely different. And that requires some learning curve on our side.
Or something more tangible where, like, for instance, in Office 365, there's a let function. Probably haven't seen that yet, but it lets you kind of build these complex formulas that essentially build a pivot table into a formula. But that only exists in the Office 365 Excel. If you don't have that, then you don't get that function. So it's literally a formula that somebody else can open your spreadsheet and not have it work. But we got to move on. So what do you think, fat or future streaming Office upgrades?
Oh, I could talk about this all day, but I will say that this is definitely going to be the future. This is something where the march of technology progress is just going to happen, and we're going to like the new features too much to give too much pushback to that.
Well, I'm going to go on a limb, and I'm going to argue fat on this one, and you got to follow my logic a little bit. This is part of Microsoft trying to get everybody on the subscription train. They want everybody to subscribe, and they're trying to use these new features as a positive. But I think that at some point the open source world will take on this idea of the subscription model, and we're going to see some pushback as people get subscription headaches from everything they have to subscribe to get their offices to work. I think the open source world is going to take this on, and then we see this kind of change tone. So we'll see.
Okay. A good bellwether for that is how tired people are going to be from the streaming wars. If people are used to subscribing to 7 different streaming platforms, then
Right.
offices just might get used to that number being high. But good conversation though. Moving on, our last topic is decentralized server environments. So this is one that I thought was very interesting. Sometimes as being in the thick of technology, we get a little bit used to technology that might be new or emerging, where the general populace has not really caught on or warmed up to the idea, if you will. So a perfect example of that is decentralized server environments, the cloud, Azure, having your servers not necessarily in a room in an office somewhere has been something that we've been comfortable with for quite some time. But a lot of clients are still getting their heads wrapped around that idea. With the pandemic occurring, a lot of our clients, we're starting to have these conversations every day where people are starting to wonder what this looks like in a few months, in next year. Are they still going to have an office as the traditional ways? A lot of people that don't necessarily own their space, they're not tied to their space, are starting to explore other options where they might have a few small offices as opposed to one large office, or they might have a portion of their workforce that's just permanently working remotely.
Okay, so are you just saying this is just the cloud? I mean, we talked about remote workforces last episode. So is a decentralized server environment just the cloud?
But I'm talking about this in the sense of infrastructure, you see. So this is where just because they've warmed up to the idea. Yeah, we're getting a little techie. What does that mean for the people that need to support it? And is the server being down the hallway going to be the best, fastest solution for all those different users in those different places? Or are we going to start needing to look at different ways to deliver the data faster to those remote users? Especially as a lot of people are relying on home office technology, which, as we're quickly learning, is not necessarily up to date. Or even from this decade, in some cases, maybe. So what do you think about that, Steve?
Well, do you think this is really driven just by the pandemic situation that's causing this?
I think the pandemic has put an expedited urgency to the situation, where people might have been content to say, oh, let's just see how that plays out, or maybe we'll put one of our business apps in the cloud. It's starting to say, okay, well, what would it look like if we moved our entire environment and our entire working infrastructure to the cloud? There's a lot more openness to, as general paradigm shifts are occurring inside of their own business, they're starting to be a lot more open to paradigm shifts of where their technology is, how it interacts.
And well, I think it always boils down to a customer about where the data is. And so I think when you talk about this, you really have to just discern from the term cloud, just to say that what really I think could be supporting this might be the concept that application providers do more to make their applications, or maybe do a better job of moving faster to the cloud, so that people don't need servers like they used to. But I think the application world moves very slow. It's tough to do that. It's not as easy as just migrating your application to the cloud. So I think there's some challenges there, but I think I get the idea that you're talking about here, and the terms that where I might call an office is not where my server might be, but it might be more than just a cloud or multiple little offices. So fad or future on this?
So I think it's the future, and I think it was always going to be the future. It's just something that we're getting to quicker. Again, because people are having these conversations just when they might not have had them as quickly and as urgently beforehand.
Okay. All right. Well, I think, I get where we're going, and, we've made this argument back to mainframes. Then we went to servers and this client PC stuff. And here we are going back to where we have this kind of centralized, you're saying decentralized because we're moving out of the building, but at the same time, we're moving back to where a lot of the horsepower is being done by these computers in the cloud. So I'm going to call it a fad, because in the next 10 years, maybe 15 years, we're going to be doing something completely different. Bandwidth is so
10,
big
15 years.
that we're back to those devices now. So you never know.
Well, I still plan for, I think you were telling me earlier about, 10, 15 years, I want a little server microchip in my head. So I don't even have to worry about any cloud or any internet speeds. I don't have to talk with Spectrum.
Will be the cloud.
Yeah, I've got everything right there.
All right, good. Thanks for a great episode, Justin. Hope everybody enjoyed it.
Yes. Have a great day, everyone. We'll talk to you soon.
Remember to click subscribe if you're watching this on our YouTube channel, and we'll look forward to seeing you next month.
Bye.